Hello. My name's Tim. I work for NHS Digital and I work within the 111 online triage team. Now, all the talks that we had earlier tonight, one big difference that we need to make clear about NHS, the online triage tool, is that we connect to services. And that's one of the key differences between some diagnostic tools, and this connection that we make is really what makes this triage tool, because there are two aspects of triaging. There's getting a connection to a tool and also the level of urgency that's required for it. Now, 111 Online is an online service that came about based upon the 111 telephone service, which is a telephone operated triaging tool which does around apparently 30,000 people a day, but that's probably one of my really dodgy calculations I did when I was doing the preparation for the service. And we're a very small team doing a very small private beta, recently started up. So we're doing very quick to audience, very sort of rapid prototyping of ideas and tools in order to try and get them out and test them. So 111 Online is the equivalent of that. Now, basically, as I said earlier, it assigns a degree of urgency and helps people connect to the services they need to. And so it really operates in a simple way. We ask people a series of questions. At the end of that, we give them a result and we try and connect them to a service, and they then go ahead and connect. These will be things like go and see your GP tomorrow, or it could be there's a walk-in centre down the road, you should need to go to that. And in some cases, we can make an appointment with them as well. So this is a new area, and we can see from the AIDA people that they're operating in a similar space as well. So to be honest, the work's awesome. It's really great. So some of the stuff we're thinking about, they're looking at it on a really great way of interfacing with the health seeker, and there's many different parts to this. And this is why it's such a challenging area to work in. So I'm going to try and be quick because I've had pizza and we want to go to the discussion afterwards. NHS is really complicated, and for a consumer or a person, actually, consumer is the wrong word to use for health. For someone using NHS services, they don't need to know how the NHS works in order to use them. That's one of the key things that we work by. So our job really is to make sure we work as hard as possible to make it as easy as them to get access to the care that they need. Now, the 111 service, I gave you a brief overview of what it was, but this is sort of what it looks like on a sort of application level. We have what we call health seekers. These are people seeking out health information or seeking out health care. And these operate, when they access 111, they primarily do this through the application. That's the interface. With AIDA, it's this great natural language tool that allows them to diagnose. For us, it's a very simple interface where people ask a series, where the system asks a series of questions, and then people then respond to those. What drives that, though, is something which is called the logic layer, which is called NHS Pathways. So this is basically a decision tree tool, which takes people's answers, then calculates the most logical thing from that answer, what's the most likely to have, then takes them through a series of questions until they get into a triaging tool at the end. This is not necessarily a diagnosis. This is where it's different. This is triaging on your urgency and what you're most likely to have and what is the most appropriate service you need to see. You can go to A&E for lots of different things. It's not always just the one thing. We also have a services layer that sits underneath that, and that is where we connect people to different health services across the UK, most likely in their local area. And this is the one thing about working within the NHS as a designer, is you're looking at things on a national level, but also delivering health at a local level. And all the people who work in healthcare here will know about the division of country within different CCGs and how care is commissioned within the UK. That's a key sort of operating environment that we work in. Now, leading on to that, there are many users of 111 Online. There's not just the person who is actually on the end of their phone or on their computer at home trying to get triaged. We have health seekers, health professionals and health organisations. That's probably in a way broadly the large split of what we define what the user is within the system. Now, to start off with health seekers, Ben Holliday used to be the head of design at DWP, wrote a blog post about user needs being both emotional and functional. Now, in health, this can really be seen, and what we find out when we do a lot of user research labs, is that people express things on an emotional level like, I'm really scared about what's happening to me, but then on a functional level like, I really need to let the system know what's wrong with me so I can get the right care. So we need to keep those two things in mind, how people are feeling, what they're currently experiencing, and how we can try and make the experience as seamless and frictionless as possible. Now, this reminded me of what the first speaker was talking about. This is referred to what we call the OODA book, which comes from John Boyd, which is a framework in which to understand health seeker journeys, which an academic in Canada called Peter Jones, who wrote a book called Design for Care, refers to. So it's about how health seekers observe the situation, they orientate themselves, then they decide and act in a continuous loop. Now, what we've got to realise is triaging isn't just a beginning, middle and end. It may be the end of a very number of health journeys that they may have taken, and it's maybe the last thing they do. Or it could be the first thing they do. Or it could be something they do in the middle of a lot of other things, such as Googling their symptoms or using ADA. We don't know where they're going to get their health information from or how they're going to act on it. I bring this up because it makes trying to understand who a health user is really complicated. Health professionals are also one of our key user group. I spoke about the triaging algorithms that we use. These need to be clinically safe, and these are written by doctors within NHS in order to, and they're constantly evolving in order to make sure that they don't miss anything. And I think every clinician I've ever spoken to always talks about one or two particularly hard situations where they've been in, where they've either missed something or something's gone wrong which they didn't envisage, and it's problematic. And there are emotional needs when they write the triaging tool as well. Health organisations, we operate in the NHS, it's government policy, this is the environment we work in as well. I mean, on one level we have organisations who don't want to send people to the wrong place. There's issues around capacity management. Over the winter we've heard a lot of stuff about hospitals being full and A&Es being overflowing and how we're going to handle this. And so part of the 111 online service is handling the needs of the organisation in terms of capacity management. This is probably the area in terms of organisations where the health, where government policy is the most prevalent, where we feel the hand of government, Department of Health pushing down on us. But organisations like ADA is exactly where the NHS should be working. So there are other organisations, not just from the Department of Health. So that gives you an idea of the complicated landscape that the designers and the researchers and the content designers and the team who work on. And just as a little aside, the team that we work on is quite small, so we have a number of developers, a number of designers, a number of content designers, and a number of researchers, and we all design the product. We are all involved in that. So we all go to all the research sessions, which we do every couple of weeks. Everyone's involved in team decision making in terms of how the product design will evolve. And it's a way, a cross-disciplinary team is a really, really strong way in terms of getting product out the door, but also making sure that everyone can bring something to the discussion and evolve the product through that. So, as I said, user needs are our base currency. This is how we describe how we want the system to respond to what we think people are going to need. And this comes out of talking to real users. As a user, I want someone to let someone know about my symptoms so I can get the right care. This is key, and this is one of our primary ethics. So I've printed up on the wall. This is what we're doing. But sometimes we don't want them to go to 111 online to triage them. They may have chest pains, they may have bleeding or severe problems. This 111 online is not the service for them. They need to go to A&E right now. So we sometimes put screens at the very start which says, is this you? Do not use this service. And this is a way probably where a clinical need is reflected within the product itself. So we have this as a screen. Do we need this? Will it always be there? Are there better ways to handle that? This is how we're evolving that. I think one of the ADA as well, you talked about how you presented information and then revealed more if the user required it, a layering of content. Have a similar approach as well too. Try and simplify the content as much as possible, but give options for people if they need more clarification to look at. We use a search by symptoms, which is at the moment the best one that we've come up with in terms of how we're testing. We're finding all sorts of problems with this. This is the key way in which we put people on a clinical pathway, so a triage pathway. So the decision tree starts from this point. Where you start in the decision tree is where it starts from what you put in here. Now, people put all sorts of stuff in this box. Sometimes they start putting in there, saw their doctor 6 months ago and this is what I felt like and this is what's happened. They write a whole essay. Sometimes they just put one word and expect it to work straight away. You've got a variety of inputs. And I think, really, if you could just do this and let them do it, And then we pull out the bits we need. And then we can start on a triaging platform. And that's how we go. And this is really where I was talking about where we are now, and this is where we want to be going. Simplifying interactions. Now, we ask a large number of questions. The user journeys can be really long. Now, we're really successful at triaging people. We get 86% of people through. So they start a journey, and they get to the end, and they get what we call a disposition. I'll come to that a bit later. But we've had to do stuff, because we came from a telephone service which had a human being on the end of the phone talking to someone. We can't do that. We can't fudge questions. When we used to see telephone operators work, they just would skip bits and they'd miss bits because they could hear the person on the end of the phone. They could understand the level of urgency. Phone operators who are trained don't necessarily have to operate the same way. We don't get those cues back. So we have to make things as simple as possible so people can move through. So at one point we had a question that was basically two things. It said, do you feel the worst you've ever felt in your life and have a rash under your skin? Yes and no. Where's that? Yes, I have a rash, I'm not sure. Whatever. These are really problematic. People weren't getting through. So we spent a lot of time iterating our questions over and over again. So we split that into two. So do you feel so ill that you can't think of anything else? Yeah. Do you have any rash, like bruising or bleeding under your skin? Yep. Okay. Well, no. Whatever. And what happens here in terms of the evolution of the product is these changes go through clinical governance and then back into the telephone service. So now the telephone operators are now operating on this model. So there's a bit of a symbiotic relationship going there. One thing we talk about a lot is how we engage with different communities as well. And the trans community is one in particular where questions such as asking about sex and gender are particularly difficult, and people cannot get through the service, it just stops them. So how do we handle that? So at the moment, we're still asking about sex, okay? But if you're not sure how to respond, we can talk about this. We think this might not be the best approach. In a lot of cases, we may never need to ask this question, so don't put it in there. But the current triaging model that we're working with has sex as one of the key drivers for a medical triage. So it's there from a clinical perspective. But this is the interplay between what good design is, or what good design's aiming for, and how we can negotiate that with clinical safety. Now finally, when we get to the end, you can get connected to a service. So in some cases it'll say, go to A&E now. That's it. And your nearest A&E is here. Here we go. But in this case, we're having a phone call booked with a one-on-one clinician that's going to call you back and give you some more information on what to do. I put this page in because it's probably the most advanced in terms of our thinking of the types of problems we're trying to cover. Firstly, people need to know that what they've done, their effort, has been rewarded with something. We always need to give some sort of time scale to when they expect they can get care, whether it's 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours. These are more of a clinical driver, to be honest. But one of the key things that came out of research is this idea we had about using reference codes. Now, they don't currently exist, but when you've got an equivalent telephone service and you're then asking someone to call you, why didn't I just call to start with? But there's a different level of clinical sort of, not safety, but like a one-on-one service is just a telephone operator, but this will be a nurse or a doctor who will call you back and actually discuss your symptom. So a reference code says, well, this is the fact that we've registered your call, and this is your code, and the information that you've had is then going to be on the system, and this doctor or nurse will be able to talk to you and tell you, read what you've answered, understand your situation, you won't have to go through the questions again. But then there are other things. This doesn't, health is, like you may get a triage now, but it may take 2 hours. You may take an hour to get to A&E, or it may go into a walk-in centre the next day. What do you do in the meantime? What care can you give now? So we have a lot of self-care advice. And we also have another thing about, well, what happens if it changes? Because it's never constant. What do you do in the meantime? So we're now starting to bring in content from other areas of NHS. We currently have stuff about treating pain at home, which is part of the one-on-one service, but that can be expanded out. So if we jump back to that architecture I showed at the very start, we've got the health seekers who are engaging with the triaging application. The application is driven by the decision chain logic, and we connect to different services through that. but that could be a voice interface. You could have natural language processing, which is how we interface with the application. We have AI and machine learning at scale across the country that could constantly improve the triaging platform. And then in terms of connecting to services, we have capacity management. We could integrate with the electronic health records. We could deliver content from other areas of the NHS. And so, at the moment, really small. But the idea is we can get bigger, we can grow our capacity as we go forward. But that's fine, but really, regardless of where the services move in terms of delivery, we'll still focus on what the primary user needs are. That's designing experiences that focus on health seekers, satisfies the clinical governance requirements and the organisational restrictions, and really gets people to the right care at the right time. Thanks.